we are on Cricbuzz Live, all set for the start of the second part of India's sojourn down under. Now they've, of course, gone down or under across the Tasman Sea to another one of their traditional rivals. Of course, it's Australia's traditional rival, but India always enjoy travelling down to New Zealand. And here to keep an eye on everything in our studio of Cricbuzz Live, we've got a couple of usual suspects. One, of course, has been there recently. The other is still adjusting to life back in India after that long flight back. Harsha, welcome back.
Just this side of what they call the ditch. The Aussies love to call it the ditch between Australia and New Zealand. So I was this side of the ditch, and now I've flown west across the ocean and back home.
Yes, but you've ditched Australia.
Was a fabulous series, but I think New Zealand's a better side than Australia at the moment.
Zach, good to have him back. He's still, I think, 5.5 hours ahead.
No,
so
long.
Both of us are still adjusting to early mornings, but he's already way ahead.
Good jet lag to have. And,
it's the best.
The fact that he mentioned that New Zealand is a better side than Australia, I think that's something is the most it's the most exciting thing about this series. You know, this series is going to be very competitive. You look at New Zealand side, they bat deep as well. They have utility cricketers. You know, they have cricketers who have good skills to bring to the party. So that's something which is exciting about this series. So it'll be a good challenge for Indian team to win this series lead up to World Cup 19.
Yes, the other thing about the series is, if I'm batting, you're the boundary line. Sometimes it's that close. He's played in Napier before. He's seen Napier. I've seen Napier. It's a small ground.
And one of the flattest wickets. So that's something which bowlers will have to deal with. It's good to see that Indian team is going with two leggies. After a long time, we are seeing Kuldeep and Chahal together. So that's another positive move by Indian team.
And I can tell you what, Harsha, since you mentioned Napier, some of us who are actually not privileged enough to be out in the middle playing there, my first trip, I was on the boundary line there, and I was told by everyone, starting with Simon Dool, that keep an eye on the ball at all times. You anyway have to do that on the field, but sometimes when you're outside the boundary line, you're not given that advice.
Wear hard hats if you're in McLean Park.
Yes.
Only 35,000 people, I believe. You know, it was long back. I went around for a walk. I saw all these malls. And I asked someone, who goes to these malls? How many people in Napier? They said 30,000 is the population of Napier. They put all of them in Eden Gardens and you'll wonder why no one's turned up.
Yes, small ground, Art Deco buildings, but for now you'll have to keep an eye on the art and architecture of what's happening out in the middle. What's coming up on India's tour to New Zealand? It starts in beautiful McLean Park in Napier and then goes on to Mount Maunganui. It's a venue that was not familiar a few years ago and now has become a favourite on that circuit. Moving on to Seddon Park in Hamilton for the 4th and 5th ODIs to round off the ODI series, which of course will be the main focal point looking ahead to 2019. Interesting that Virat Kohli did mention at the toss, he talked about the spirit of cricket. Very often when you refer to a team who are given the award of the spirit of cricket, you're trying to suggest they're not such a good team, but they're just well behaved.
That's what happens in the IPL, isn't it? You never know why people get the points they do. But New Zealand, post that phase, I think in South Africa, after McCullum took over, New Zealand are playing cricket in a different way. You won't, well, like Australia is trying to play now. But New Zealand always played different, and Williamson's one of the nice guys on the circuit, so you'll see that.
He is, but let's not forget, if you have a look at where New Zealand stand in terms of the rankings and of course the way they've been playing, they're right up there. So you'll have to take them seriously. Come World Cup, they're always one of those perennial semi-finalists. Maybe they want to go a step further, but these numbers, gentlemen, suggest that it's going to be some serious contention in there.
They've been consistent, and one of the reasons for that, as Harsha said, Brandon McCullum, you know, he got that spark in the team. He was instrumental in terms of getting the team believing that they can beat any side. They've always been consistent in ICC tournaments. If you look at the history as well, you know, they've been finishing in that top 4 always. You know, very consistent with the winning percentage in ICC tournaments, the big tournaments. But now the bilateral series also, because of the good batting balance, they have been able to achieve this consistency. And now Kane Williamson has taken that mantle from Brandon McCullum forward in terms of taking things to another level. Another big factor is Trent Boult and Tim Southee as well. You know, they've been working very well as bowling pair, especially in test matches, and that's something which has helped. You know, bowlers win you matches. We always talk about it, but when you have a good bunch of bowlers who are working together, working as a unit, you'll always see the percentage of winning will be on the upward side.
And he's not saying that only because he's a bowler. I mean, bowlers win series, but we saw with the way the Sunrisers played, we've seen with the way New Zealand playing that bowlers still win matches for you, even in the short form game.
And interesting, that was one of the topics that was talked about at the toss. Virat Kohli acknowledged the role played by his bowlers, and they will be first up, because let's remind all of you that New Zealand have won the toss. They will be batting first, so it's India's bowlers who will be in focus first. But well before we have a look at the lineups, I think it's time to go to another member of our Cricbuzz Live family who wanted to feel a little bit at home. So we said, Dooley, we don't have an extra chair for you here. Instead, we're going to keep you standing in the lovely climbs in Napier. Here's Simon Dool, centre stage.
Potential semi-finalists at the World Cup? Absolutely. Along with England, I think India and New Zealand are the three key teams. Australia haven't quite found their mojo yet. South Africa, we're not sure how good they are or how good they'll be in England, and of course Pakistan. I think they will be a force to be reckoned with as well if they can sort their one-day cricket out properly. So New Zealand, India, definite potential semi-finalists. I think the bowling will be the key. And in England, I think what we're going to see later on this year is the spinners will have a big part to play. Later that tournament goes, the more those surfaces will turn. So New Zealand and India will rely heavily on their spin bowlers through the middle to take wickets and to slow that run rate up. So two sides looking towards the World Cup. I think potential winners of the World Cup if they could get past England.
Potential semi-finalists, but a lot of focus on spin. Now we know that New Zealand aren't going with their full complement, but India have enough strength as far as spin is concerned in the side. So let's give you a quick look at the lineups, and then we'll get Harsha and Zaheer Khan to talk about that. No Dinesh Karthik, Ambati Rayudu comes in there, and we've got a change in spinners because instead of Jadeja, we've got Kuldeep Yadav coming in. So India have played both their wrist spinners in a sense.
Very interesting to see that is indeed the batting order, because I think Dhoni at 4 works perfectly, but Kohli in his last press conference said no, he likes Dhoni at 5. But if that works well, then maybe it's a shootout between Rayudu and Karthik. Rayudu will not bowl 2 overs, I can promise you, because Kedar Jadhav is available there. But India playing 2 seamers and Vijay Shankar, New Zealand are playing 4, so they've read it differently.
Looking at this playing 11, I feel if Ambati Rayudu has been back in the playing 11, I think he will be batting at number 4. Yeah. Because that must be the thought process. You know, if Dinesh Karthik was playing, then he has been looked at as a finisher now from the team management. Now the reason Ambati Rayudu has come back, you will probably again see MS Dhoni batting at number 5, Rayudu will be at 4, and Kedar Jadhav will be probably at 6.
Karthik said that's the role the team has given him, to bat at 6 and play the role of the finisher. So that's clearly his role.
But of course, the whole chat about the batting will be once India really do come to chase. At the moment, looking at the composition of India's bowling attack, looking at 2019, I mean, obviously you've got to focus on the series, but looking at 2019, how would you look at India's spin composition in England?
India would desperately want to play both Chahal and Kuldeep Yadav, and Chahal's return to form in the last game in Australia would be a big factor, because it just slipped off a little bit after the good performances in South Africa. It just slipped a little bit. But India's big run came when both of them were playing well. And for both of them to be in the side, then you need Hardik Pandya to be the third seamer, because otherwise you can't play both of them in the side. And Hardik Pandya is, 2036 we might get a decision. I don't know. That's terrible. I mean, I don't mind if people say, Hardik Pandya, KL Rahul, this is your punishment. You're not available. At least they know, everyone knows where they are. You can't say, actually, we can't decide. That's not fair on them. That's not fair on Virat Kohli for his balance. You're searching to get the right combination. They're looking for Vijay Shankar to play that role. But Hardik was giving you 10 overs. Or at least 8 overs. Vijay Shankar cannot give you 8 overs. So I think India is still in a state of flux on knowing that combination.
Yeah, in fact, it's a good cue to take from there, because when you talk about spin, yes, whether you look at 2019 in England or not, what about New Zealand in those conditions? We know we often talk about them as seam-friendly conditions. Of course, when it comes to the flat surfaces, short boundaries, it's going to be full of runs. So how have spinners actually fared in New Zealand? And we've put some numbers together, and this is spin bowlers in each country after the ICC World Cup of 2015, and have a look at their success rate and where it stands, where New Zealand stands. And that tells you a story that New Zealand is not the place where you want to pack your side with spinners.
There's only one thing, I mean, the numbers are very stark. There's only one thing that runs counter to that. Look who's below New Zealand. Below New Zealand is Australia. Kuldeep took wickets, Chahal just took 6. The only difference is in Australia, Zach, you would have enjoyed this. That mid-wicket boundary was so far away. You could bounce it. You knew they're not going to pull you over mid-wicket for 6. In New Zealand, the boundaries are shorter. That could be one reason.
You know what's exciting part? Is that Harsha is still continuing with his sledging from Australia. He's just finding Australians' numbers and where they are at the bottom of the table. I think, yes, New Zealand grounds are tough to bowl under. If the margin of error is less, surely because the grounds are very small, and you'll often see the one side, probably square leg or point is so close that even the uppish cut will also go for sixes, and that's something which you have to take into account when you're chasing down the scores as well, because the scores might look big, but effectively they might be like 30-40 runs different just because of the size of the ground.
And they've always been good starters, Kuldeep and Chahal. They've done well traditionally in the first game of a series, but this is where it'll be a good test for them to know that New Zealand are batting first. McLean Park has got short boundaries, particularly square of the wicket, so they'll have to keep an eye on things.
I'd like to see how they play wrist spin. In recent times, they've had Sodi available to them, so they're probably getting a little better at playing wrist spin. But traditionally, New Zealand, West Indies, South Africa have not been great wrist spin playing countries. So it'll be interesting to see how they play these two. And Vijay Shankar and Kedar Jadhav have to bowl 10 between them. So it'll be interesting how they play Jadhav. What we saw in the last series was that after the curiosity had worn off, they just sat on the back foot.
Yeah.
They just sat on the back foot waiting for Jadhav and started hitting over mid-wicket. And this news travels very quickly. So I'd like to see how India's fifth bowler goes. So it's still experiment time.
We'll probably get Simon Dool to talk about what the pitches are likely to be. But in your experience, Zaheer, when you go to New Zealand, it's one thing when you play in the white shirts and you're playing the longer format of the game, you know what to expect. We've seen at times when you can't make out the difference between the pitch and the outfield. Hamilton in 2002 comes to mind.
You can expect anything. You've seen in 2002 the wickets was so helpful and there's full of moisture. You could not make out whether you're playing on the plot or the wicket. So that's something which was a completely exceptional series with regard to the conditions. So depending on how the overseas conditions are, usually you've seen in England as well. You've seen similar to England, New Zealand as well. Depending on the conditions, if it's overcast, you'll definitely have a lot of help as bowler. The surface is nice and hard, but if it's watered nicely, then you might see a lot of moisture and there will be a lot of help.
You enjoyed that
especially
day, Hamilton. You picked up a 5 for both teams under 100.
But we had to play that match, and here's something which how Saurav Ganguly looked at things was good, because we're one down in the series, so we needed to play the match. So even if the conditions were tough, it was a very calculated call taken by the management, saying that this is our best chance. Like if we lose, the scoreline is still going to show that India has lost the series. But if we're able to pull it through, then it's going to be 1-1, and we'll be able to draw the series. So that's something which always was the case. But that particular series, I remember even Kaki at the pitch report, a lot of people used to just put that Kaki and it would go full in. That was showing how much moisture was there in the wicket. And 120, 130 was actually a winning total.
In recent times in these one days, they're hitting 300 for fun. They're hitting 330, 340 just like that in the one day.
We were lucky that series that Jeffrey Boycott wasn't doing the pitch reports, because he would have lost a few keys. The only saving grace was...
He never loses keys.
He
never uses his own.
He had a sponsor for that, even for that. So that's why the sponsor's logo would have been outside and it would have stayed up. But just a quick word on the toss. No-brainer, trying to put runs on the board with small ground.
Or maybe New Zealand just think, let's go bat first. We've got 4 proper fast bowlers. They don't have a single sort of part-time medium pacer. They're playing 4 proper fast bowlers. Boult, Ferguson, Southey, Bracewell, 4 fast bowlers. It helps that Bracewell and Southey will bat. So Santner at 7 is the big comeback. He's been out for almost a year. So they bat really deep, and they've got 50 overs in there. Maybe Williamson, and they've got Munro in there. So Munro will give you 3-4 overs if required. Williamson will give you 3-4 if required. This is a wonderfully balanced side.
And just recently, we had a situation where Sri Lanka had them on the mat and you just thought, okay, finally Sri Lanka can go home with something, and Doug Bracewell spoiled the party.
Yeah, he did. And Tisara Pereira kept scoring runs, did he, in that series?
Oh,
he kept hammering everything.
He scored 140 in one game in a losing cause.
Yeah, and batting at 140, but small grounds. So you never know what a good score is. You think that'll help India a little bit? You don't, or they would know what a good score is because they're home ground.
No, I think as far as scores are concerned, it will be dependent on how the surface is playing. You know, if it's on the flatter side, you'll actually see what we are expecting more than those runs are scored. Like you might see 340, 350, but effectively, like I said, because of the shorter boundaries, effectively it's around 305, 310. You know, so that should be taken into account by the team chasing. And as far as chasing is concerned, I think Indian team has been doing consistently well. You know, they are comfortable when they're bowling first, knowing exactly what they are going after, and that has always worked for Virat also. Like, you know, the run chases do get him going, and Napier is one of the flattest tracks, I think, in New Zealand. You'll see, looking at the composition of both the sides, you get a hint that, you know, it's going to be a flat surface. The conditions are good, so you can expect a high scoring game today.
Got a hint there, but how about taking the hint forward and trying to get a perspective from on the ground? We saw lots of greenery behind Simon Doull when he spoke to us last. Let's find out what he thinks about the pitches this summer, downer under, as we keep saying.
Flat pitches, absolutely. I think there's runs aplenty. We saw that in that Sri Lankan series, particularly at Mount Maunganui. There was huge scores there. Nelson produced a very big score as well. I think this newly relayed pitch in Napier at McLean Park will be perfect for batting. We've seen some huge scores in the 2020 competition, our local competition there on the new surface. Big score there. Definitely big scores at Mount Maunganui. Hamilton, smallish ground, that'll produce an enormous score, maybe a 340, 350 in Hamilton. And then to Eden Park, we saw a tie at Eden Park. Remember, Ravi Jadeja, outstanding to get India a tie in the last match that India played New Zealand at Eden Park. I'm expecting another big scoring match there. So flat pitches, runs aplenty, and tough work for the bowlers, boys.
Tough work for the bowlers. That's the mantra from Simon Doull. You could see almost grimacing as a fast bowler himself, but now, of course, he's staying far away from that. So, well, that's answered the question. Flat pitches, that's what we can expect, and definitely to start with in Napier, that's been a traditional flat pitch.
They call them postage stamp grounds in New Zealand. Remember Richard Levy? He hit some, what, 10 or 12 sixes or something in no time, because his default shot, if he was in doubt what would he say, oh, okay, I'll hit a 6, because the boundary was just there. I don't like 340, 350 grounds. I don't know matches, so I hope it's not a 340, 350
The only mistake Richard Levy made was he didn't take that in his back pocket and come to the IPL and play on that.
No, because he couldn't play spin, which is why I think it'll be interesting. If you're going in to play 340, 350 game or 330 game, then the wrist spinners can play a big part. That's my view. You can. But Ross Taylor's in tremendous form. I think, you know, one of the stats that's interesting to see is how do 4, 5, 6, 7 play. And Taylor, Nichols, Latham and Williamson himself at 3 have been in tremendous form. So that is where India will have to catch up a little bit with 4, 5, 6.
I think for New Zealand to post a big total, the key is going to be Kane Williamson and Ross Taylor as well, because these two people are playing in the middle overs. They play spin well. You know, Kane Williamson, we've seen probably one of the best players of spin. You know, uses the crease very well, uses his feet very well, gets to the close to the pitch of the ball. So that's something which is very important when you're playing. A spin, reads the ball from the hand, how it's been delivered. So that's very important when you play spin. So for New Zealand to see off that middle phase, which has been India's strength when Kuldeep and Chahal has been playing together, they need Kane Williamson to bat through in those middle overs.
Yes, so we've touched on King Kane for the moment, but it's interesting that we've had a full discussion and not mentioned the man who's always the focal point of everything. He was the focal point of the series in Australia. We've taken it for granted now. Ross Taylor, interestingly, said, let's not focus on him. So what we'll do is here, we'll try and keep our discussion for the mid-innings before he's going to come out to bat. All about Kohli, all about his awards, how much of an impact he'll make in the series. For now, let's get yet another member of Cricbuzz Live. Of course, he comes with a few stumpers all the time. What's he got for us to start off this series in New Zealand? This is the Joy Factor, and this is what Joy Bhattacharya has for us. Which cricketer playing today is the only one to be the leading run scorer in an under-19 World Cup tournament? It's always great to see players from the under-19 World Cups come up and make an impact in the senior form of the game. So that's up to you. Hashtag Cricbuzz Live.
There's so many of them.
Exactly why.
And if Joy is asking this question, then it cannot be, the answer cannot be obvious. So it may not be Williamson or Kohli.
Oh,
fair enough, fair enough.
We'll wait and see.
I was actually going in that direction.
Yeah.
At least he added playing today, because at times if you hear Joy saying on the field today, first thing you check the names of the two umpires.
Correct.
Were they former players?
Yeah.
Or even a coach?
I think I have a hint. Let's see.
So we've been trying to get a sense of these pitches now. We always like to try and get a predicted score at this stage. It's tough because we haven't really established the conditions there. So maybe it's going to be a bit of a shot in the dark, but go for it nonetheless. Where
I will
you
actually
think New Zealand will finish?
trust Simon Dolia. You know, he's been very clear in terms of his predictions that the series is going to be a high-scoring series, and from that point of view, I think 300 plus is something which is safe to say, looking at the conditions as well, and looking at this New Zealand batting lineup as well.
300 plus could also be 399. So give us a score.
Well, I don't know exactly how the wicket is going to play. If you give me 2 overs, then I'll be in better position. But here I can say that the size of the ground is also smaller, so 300 plus is a safe prediction.
Chotta boundary. Okay, chalo. Let's you and me play this game. 327. It's a tuka. I mean, how does it matter?
327. Okay, I'm playing a little.
You like fantasy league games, right? Come on, put in a number.
I know. No, I'm going a little more conservative. I think India's bowlers will have an impact. I think the wrist spinners, if they put it in the right spots, will cause a few problems for them early on. So I'll go over 300, but 306.
Okay, chalo. Let's see.
He's just said 300 plus. He's playing safe today, first game.
No, Zach, when we come back in between.
So what's it? 327.
He wanted a couple of overs. So
Okay,
when we come for our first
I'm
combo.
saying 315. Let's make it interesting then. 315.
Okay, 315.
Sure.
There you go. We've laid down the gauntlet. First game, Napier, is where the action is happening. Of course, we'll be back in between. We'll be back in the 15th over with Cricbuzz Combox. And you'll see these gentlemen try and put a sense of perspective into where we are, because once the game actually gets underway, all the speculations go out the window. That's when we know what's happening. So we've got Simon Dool, we've got Joy Bhattacharya. Thank you very much to Zaheer Khan and Harsha Bhogle. We'll see you again very shortly. Cricbuzz Combox, and of course in the mid innings to try and of course talk about King Kohli.